And welcome back to Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm your humble host, Chris Clements. And this sitting next to me is not Sean Noble. This is my good friend, Cody Ritchie, live and in person, direct from Crest Insurance Company. Cody, welcome. You're in the hot seat today. You're sitting in Sean's seat. Sean is on vacation. I invited Cody to come on here and rant with me for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, however long it takes. He was gracious enough to accept the invitation.
Well, I had so much fun the last time, Chris, and thank you. And miss Sean, he's a nice guy.
Well, but, Sean it might be in France. He might be in Ireland. He might be, I don't know where he is today.
Somewhere other than here. But what a beautiful day today in Scottsdale.
It is an amazing day here in Scottsdale. And welcome to Scottsdale. You had to drive up the treacherous I-10 to get here. I
did. Usually, we have a place up here, so we stay here quite a bit. But this morning, I actually did make the drive up from Tucson.
Oh, wow.
And
how was that stretch between Casa Grande and Phoenix?
Surprisingly today it wasn't bad, but the last 5 or 6
usually it's backed up, and you realize we have no funding for that expansion right now.
Right. Before our good friend, the Governor Ducey left office, he pushed real hard to get it done, and then I guess the feds overturned it.
Yeah, that would be our great Mr. Buttigieg.
Yeah, and I was just thinking to myself, I wonder what the amount of commerce that passes through I-10, the southern corridor of the United States. Trillions of dollars?
Oh, easily.
Yeah, and they can't widen.
It's the final stretch here in the state of Arizona that really needs to be widened.
It's so dangerous. It's so crazy. But
well, you have one accident on that stretch, and it basically shuts down everything for hours at a time.
Hours at a time. And then if you have two, you're a couple of days.
Well, I mean, usually one happens, coming north, and then sure enough, something happens going south.
It does. Yeah.
And then people are trying to get it around, and they go through the reservation, which the Gila River is, leaders don't like that at all because
I did get a ticket last year coming up. A pickup truck pulled me over because I was passing on the right. And I got a $55 ticket from tribal police. They said they said I could show up at court a month later or pay the fine, and it doesn't even go on my record. I'm in the insurance business, so for full disclosure, I do have one ticket out there, and it was from a nice police officer. I was speeding. I did deserve the ticket, but it wasn't punitive.
Oh, well, that's good.
Because I saw a little stretch.
I've never seen those guys.
Yeah,
there.
well, it was shocking.
You must be a unicorn because that one stretch you never see anybody.
No, it was a tribal police officer.
Yeah, well, and you are in the insurance business, so how's that going? You say you're up here, you have a place up here, but in all fairness, you have a very large, growing business concern up here with Crest. You're a tremendous supporter of ASU athletics. You're a supporter of the Coyotes. You're a supporter of the Cardinals. You guys have branched out from Tucson, like a lot of businesses have branched out from Tucson, come to Phoenix, and really made a great mark for yourself.
Well, before you get me in too much trouble,
I'm not going to get you in trouble.
Before you get me in too much trouble, we do support the University of Arizona a lot.
No, you're a massive supporter of Arizona. But what I'm saying is, it's a very unique thing for a business that originated in Tucson, mm-hmm. which you did, and we can get into that if you like, and the humble origins of Crest Insurance, which you talked about the last time you were on the show. But it's very unique for someone to recognize an opportunity, right? And say, okay, we see an opportunity in Phoenix as a growing market, obviously one of the fastest growing metropolises in the country. Mm-hmm. Plant a flag not too long ago, and capitalize on that growth, and still be giving. And be unashamed about giving back to the community up here, which has been tremendous. I've watched it, having moved up here from the old Pueblo, and I've watched what you guys have done. Most companies that move up, that plant a flag up here, don't do what you're doing.
Well,
they just don't. I can think of a couple. I'm not going to name names, but they very quietly come up here. They do their thing. They build their business. But you guys, like I said, Crest is everywhere.
Well, in our business, we sort of have to be involved in the community. It's common sense. We have a lot of customers. We cover the whole gamut from anywhere from, native gaming to trucking to construction to nonprofits to manufacturers to everything. So, and all those people have causes. And so an owner of a business may be really heavily involved in the Boys and Girls Club. What we found out, though, when we came up here, a lot of my business partners are ASU grads.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like the old deal. I just saw that movie Air. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a great movie.
No, I haven't. But
remember the old Michael Jordan?
Reviews.
Remember what Michael Jordan used to say? Republicans and Democrats buy Nikes?
Yes.
So, but not only that, we're up in Flagstaff.
There's a company in America that sells beer that kind of forgot about that.
Yeah.
We can get to that later.
Yeah, well, but we did up in Flagstaff. We sponsor. Went to a football game up there last fall, and at the Sky Dome, you'll see our logo up there. So we're heavily involved there. In our other communities, up in Colorado, Wyoming, where I went to school, and a little bit out in San Diego. It's a little tougher to plant a flag out there, but we're trying. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's noticeable, right? And you're a big hockey fan.
Oh yeah, I love hockey.
So what's your? I mean, let's get right into it, right? What's your view on the Tempe Coyotes?
To any of you Tempe listeners, viewers out there, vote yes.
Vote yes.
Yeah, my daughter
goes here first.
My daughter goes to ASU, and I asked her to re-register to her apartment in Tempe. So she got her ballot and she voted yes.
So what is the big controversy? Like I read in the Republic the other day that the site where they're looking to build it on was, might have been a toxic waste dump or something like that.
Well, I think there's a hangover effect.
That was neither here nor there.
There's a hangover effect, and the new owners of the team who've owned it for 3 years, and for full disclosure, I've only met the president one time, but when they moved out to the West Valley, they had this vision that the West Valley would grow and hockey would be great out there. It works for football because you go on Sundays when the traffic's not too bad. But on the weekdays when you'd have to fight the traffic, because I do it all the time from here and from Tucson, hour and a half on a Tuesday night, on Monday night. And then their fan base lives over mostly in the East Valley. I think a buddy of mine who who used to work for the Coyotes, told me that if you took their season ticket holders in 2003 or 4 when they moved out to Glendale, 92% of them were on the streets, not the avenues. And so coming back over to this part of town, the controversy is, they built out this arena for them about 20 years ago. It's a nice arena.
It's hard to believe that it's been that long.
I know, but it was hard for them to be economically competitive against the other teams in the league. Hockey will work in the Valley. Guarantee it'll work. If you're a hockey fan, if you're watching the playoffs right now, maybe the best or second best player in hockey was born and raised here in Scottsdale, a guy named Austin Matthews on the Toronto Maple Leafs. He came from that developmental.
So you would know that.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that. The second best player, American-born player, and maybe the third or fourth or fifth best player in the playoffs is a guy named Matthew Tkachuk, whose dad, Keith Tkachuk, used to play for the Coyotes. He was born in Scottsdale. So they're planting their seeds. They're doing the right thing. They're involved in their community. They're giving back. But it's the typical, the guy's a billionaire. Why are we subsidizing him? They're not. What they're doing, it's a tax abatement district, kind of like that Rio Nuevo I was in Tucson, where they get to keep their own sales tax for, I think, 20 years. But they're also developing apartments. And I think, I'm not that involved. You probably know way more than me.
No.
But this is a Phoenix, Tempe kind of issue. The thing that's really interesting, the Tempe City Council voted 7-0 to put on the ballot. And the last 5 mayors of Tempe have all stamped their approval on it. So you have a guy like me who's, Republican, conservative, but it's good for that brand of Arizona and of the Valley. If you lose the team, it's going to be hard for you to get it back. And I think the Phoenix metro area is only one of 12 or 14 metro areas in the U.S. that have the big 4: hockey, basketball, football, and baseball. Yeah. And if you lose that, and I'm telling you, if you go to a game for the next couple of years while they're building it, if you want to have a blast next season, go down to the Mullet Arena. It is. I go to every sporting event of all the big 4 plus college. Nothing is like a game down there at the Mullet right now. It's a blast. Yeah.
Well, you've taken me to a game before out there at the
COVID.
Yeah, during COVID, and we had to wear masks and everything else until we got there.
But what's great about hockey, real quick,
it was even then it was a really fun experience, and they've done a tremendous job.
What's great about hockey is I use it as an example, even in business. So 2 teams play each other in the playoffs right now. It's epic. These guys will give everything they can to win the series. They'll dive in front of a puck. they'll just, guys will get their teeth knocked out and they'll be on the ice the next shift. One guy got 77 stitches and he missed 6 minutes of the game. But what happens is at the end of the series, there's the famous handshake where these guys will, after they've played and they may have gotten in a fight with a guy or at least checked them every game. When they go through the line, they shake their hand. There's a great deal of respect. And it can be that way too in politics and in business. So we have competitors. Do I love them? No, because they're our competitors. Do I hate them? No, not at all. Do I respect them? Absolutely. Most of them, right? And so if you can use hockey as a kind of a symbol or analogy of life after that series, and then the winning team is usually so gracious because they knew that the losing team, there was the thread between winning and losing.
Oh, of course.
So, that's what I love about it. All sports, even basketball is the same way. About hockey, those guys are the ultimate warriors. The other day I was at a restaurant and I ran into two of the players here.
Yeah.
They're so humble. They're such nice people.
But very few sports do you see guys throw off their gloves and throw down on the ice rink. You don't see that in football too often. No, you certainly don't see that on a basketball court.
You really don't. And they don't do it as much as they, and especially in the playoffs, because you take a bad penalty, it's the difference between winning and losing the game. But, I'm starting to ramble on a little bit.
No, you're fine, because I think this is it's a major issue for.
But it's a garbage dump. It's a garbage dump. It's toxic at landfill. They've offered to clean it up, redevelop. It's kind of an ugly sight down there.
Yeah.
And I guess the people that are against it say that's the last viable piece of land in Tempe.
The last garbage dump that they'll.
Yeah, but who else is going to go in and spend $2 billion to redevelop it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I hope so.
And you drive into Tempe and see what ASU is doing. It's unbelievable.
They really have done a nice job.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Just the buildings, the structures, everything else. I mean, the refitting of Sun Devil Stadium, everything they're doing is creating
jobs,
better capital investment, and they're really kind of showing everybody how it's done.
Right. And to give a plug to my guys down in Tucson, I think they're doing a good job too. So yeah.
No, I mean Tucson is on the crux of something amazing.
In spite of ourselves, yeah.
Well, I mean, you and I have talked about the biggest obstacle in Tucson. And the biggest obstacle in Tucson continues to be, politics aside, and this is not a Democrat issue, it's not a Republican issue. Tucson needs to clean itself up.
Right, yeah.
It needs to clean up the weeds, clean up the refuse. Here in Phoenix, Tempe, Scottsdale, Mesa, there's a little something called urban blight ordinances.
Right.
And they are enforced in ways that they actually compete up here, who has better ordinances to make you clean up your yard. In Tucson, they have the same ordinances on the book, but nobody enforces them.
Nobody enforces it.
It's horrible.
Up here, our place is just off the Greenbelt. I mean, every time I drive down there, I'm just amazed at how nice it looks. And like the stereotype is big business. They're not for a clean environment. They're not for this. All they need to do is just drive up and down Hayden Road in Scottsdale and look at just the greenery, the lakes, the people out jogging, walking. It's safe, it's clean, it's nice. You don't see weeds. Tucson's getting a little bit better to be, people like ourselves, when you live down there, helped with the cleanup thing. But I'm going to say this. People oftentimes ask me, do I like Phoenix or Tucson better? I like both. I like Flagstaff. I like Sierra Vista, where we have an office.
You're a true blue Arizona.
But I really am. But the thing about Tucson is, in actuality, the Tucson desert is probably, if you just took the tract of land, 200 years ago, is more stunning.
Oh, of course.
Higher mountains, higher elevation, a few more saguaros. But Phoenix is like the person that moved into this valley, little denser, a little lower, but really did a nice job just clean it up. And I always use the analogy, and I get myself in trouble sometimes, but I'll try to change it a little bit. Tucson's the naturally pretty or good-looking person that doesn't really, maybe doesn't cut their hair as much often. Phoenix is the place where they make sure they go in every 3 weeks for a haircut and things like that. So kind of an analogy.
That's an interesting analogy. I don't think I've ever.
Well, I mean, because they've invested in the roads, in the parks, in the cleaning up and stuff like that. But when you look at the Catalina,
would you say Tucson is the really pretty, striking girl with all the tattoos and piercings?
I don't know about that.
And then Phoenix.
I just say maybe
Phoenix
they're
is
really,
without all that.
They're really, and I have daughters, and you know my wife. Tucson's maybe the girl that goes out without putting on makeup.
Okay.
And in Phoenix, or the guy who, puts on a nice shirt and tie over the guy in Tucson's wearing the hat on backwards or something.
Well, there's all these stories, and you and I.
But I love both places.
You and I fought this battle, living there about the economic development community there, flying people in at the dead of night to not show them, the trash and refuse and everything coming from the airport. And you've done your part trying to clean up that area, through the Tucson Chamber. And but it doesn't seem. I had the same discussion with the head of the chamber during the election season. He asked me a very point blank question. I was down there with a candidate, and what do you see as the biggest difference? And I brought this up to him. I said, well, it's the cleanliness and it's the blight. If the business community can make this the number one issue, you could gain some really real power.
Well, it goes way back. You know this, but I was born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. My mom's American, my dad's Canadian, so we lived there our younger years. My dad used to take such great pride in the summertime. Everybody would mow their lawns, and you would never see weeds from one front yard to the next. Everybody had flowers. If people didn't have that much money, they still painted their houses, things like that. And I remember about 10 years ago, Calgary was voted the cleanest city in the world. That's pretty cool. Then we moved to oil boomtown, where people move in and out and stuff like that. And it was always a big bone of contention for my dad. And so I guess I'm kind of a product of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So Tucson, though, the charm of Tucson is it's the old Pueblo. We're down closer to Mexico, older homes and things like that. So I think the new leadership over the last years, and we started that Clean Up Tucson deal about 13 years ago.
Yeah.
What's really cool, I don't know if you've been down there lately, downtown Tucson is popping with the Rio Nuevo. Yeah. But that's thanks to the state.
Well, and it's thanks to business leaders like you who actually, you were on that board, and you added some reality to it. You called out people to where they need to be called out in terms of what Rio Nuevo needed to be, the investments that needed to happen.
Yeah.
You caught some flack on that.
I really did. But what's really cool about that,
I'm sorry to call you out on that, but I just remember you catching a bunch of flack for actually calling people out, and you made a couple enemies too.
Well, yeah.
Got somebody fired, I remember.
I didn't, but somebody else got fired. Yeah. But in the tax abatement district, that's what they're trying to do, sort of in Tempe. And so it's really good when government and private enterprise can come together. My understanding is they're not asking for one nickel, except for to reinvest their own taxes into that district.
Yeah, I think in the Tempe issue, you just have some NIMBYs there who don't like the idea of change and development.
It was really funny because I watched their debate. And it was, the moderator was, I think, a student over at ASU. And on the one side, you had a city councilman, and you had Javier Gutierrez. He's a very sharp guy, the president of the Coyotes, dressed in a really nice suit. And he was going against a couple old guard Tempe people. And he was such a gentleman because there were so many opportunities for him to go low.
Oh, you don't want to do that.
No, he did. Because
you've got that. You've got,
and they meant well.
You've got everyone on your side anyway. As long as you believe that you're winning, there's no reason to go low.
Well, the funny thing is,
who genuinely, I mean, you don't want to discount them. They generally have some concerns, but there is an element, I would argue, that's just they see what's going on around them. They see all the new buildings, the tall buildings, redevelopment happening everywhere. New hotels. I think there was announced like 3 or 4 new hotels in downtown Tempe, and they just want to keep it the way it is, and they've lost that control.
People are going to vote against you no matter what. I mean, if Mother Teresa ran for president, she'd start out with 45% people against her. So
speaking of, great segue, by the way, way to go. Yeah. Speaking, there's a presidential election coming up. Mm-hmm. Do you have any opinions about that sort of thing?
I do.
Yeah.
And I might catch some flack on it. I do believe, as a good Republican, and I'm not a, everybody wants to stereotype everybody, but I also like to, in my business, we don't get anything for coming in second place.
No.
So you have to have ROI. You have to invest properly. I honestly I think the country, in my own opinion, doesn't want a rematch of President Biden versus President Trump.
Well, 70% of Democrats, I think I saw that the other day, 70% of Democrats do not want Biden to run. And right now, RFK Jr. is pulling what, 25%?
Right.
That's unbelievable.
So I just don't know how it's going to go. But I'm 58 years old, and I think I have pretty good energy. But 20 years from now, I don't know if I want to, or 22 years from now, make decisions that are the most important decisions for all of us. And I think at a certain time, a true statesman knows when to side exit the stage and help people. The best example is our old Senator Kyle. Not old, but our old, like he used to be our senator, former Senator Kyle. Such a gentleman and true statesman. And the Democrats had people like that too. Let somebody else try to run for it. So, me personally, I'm really hoping for Governor DeSantis.
I think you're giving Joe Biden way too much credit in terms of being a true. He has an opportunity to be a true statesman when we know for a fact that he's in mental decline. He's being managed more than anything.
Yeah.
It is sad, but it's all about power. It's all about control, and you have an element within the called the deep state or the administrative state that is propping that person up so that they can keep control.
And when I say statesman,
I agree with that
when I say statesman, Chris, I mean statespeople, like the whole group of people that are maybe propping up. I mean, I'll bet anybody. Well, I better be careful, but I'll bet somebody $100 that as I voted for him twice. I did. Do I like everything about him? No, absolutely not.
You mean Trump?
Trump, yeah. And I don't think you want people that will vote for you instead of vote against you. And we haven't had that for a long time. We haven't had people that unify and bring people and sell their visions to people. And then you shouldn't have to count on winning an election. So, and it happened here in Arizona. If you did such a great job and can convince people and really give it your heart and soul, and you can win over them with your ideas and your actions, you should be able to get 60% of the vote, right? And there shouldn't be any question about every single election going into like what side cheated, who did this, who did that. But I think that we need a new side, and on the Republican side, I'm hoping he'll announce. But I went to Florida during COVID, and I like just common sense. My favorite thing that Governor DeSantis did was when that hurricane came through.
Sure.
They built that bridge to that island in 2 days. 2 days.
Yeah.
He knew that his legacy was going to be judged on that. And they had, 3,000 Florida Power trucks there, road contractors. They acted like it was a war, and it was. It was a war zone. But a lot of common sense things that he's done for business and making it a better place to live, a safer place to live, a better quality of life. And he's younger. He's younger than I am, and I think he'd be good. And if not him, somebody else. But I think that the country's, in my opinion, going down the wrong direction with a lot of these just nonsense side issues that take our eye off the ball on the bigger picture stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I believe Trump is being overconfident right now. He's looking at his poll numbers. He's got some good people working for him that have been part of the Florida apparatus before. I heard a podcast on this yesterday. He's running about 50-55%, but Ron is still at 20 to 30% depending on the polling. If you go into the swing states, he's outpolling decisively Trump. And I think Ron, having met him this last year when he came to Arizona, I think his biggest issue that he has to address, and I haven't seen this yet in the reporting that's happening, and it's one of Trump's great strengths that you've actually seen, and got to give credit where credit is due.
Right.
Donald Trump is an excellent retail politician.
He is.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. He remembers names. He remembers faces. He kisses babies, shakes hands. He does all that very, very well. You got to give him credit. That's one of the reasons why he beat Hillary. And one of the reasons also why he lost this last time, because that rug was kind of pulled out from under him due to COVID and the fact that the rallies and the different things he's really, really good at, he wasn't able to do. Ron DeSantis is not that type of politician. He's going to have to run on what he's done in Florida. He's going to have to run on things like COVID that you mentioned. I mean, how many people went down to Florida for COVID? Even Sandy Cortez from Westchester went to vacation down to Miami during COVID.
Or how he protected the people in the nursing homes. He didn't shut down the whole state, but he knew where the vulnerable people were. The one thing is, I actually was able to meet President Trump a couple times. I mean, I don't hate him at all. I mean, I'm not like an anti-Trumper. I just don't think that I work, 270 some people work with me. I know for a fact that there's people that won't vote for him.
Yeah.
I know for a fact. It's not that they're stuffing the ballot box. They just won't vote. They may sit it out if it's somebody else, but they're motivated to go vote against them. Now, on the same token that he was very gracious, you meet him one-on-one, he's actually a nice person, got a great sense of humor.
Yeah, you were down in Mar-a-Lago not too long ago.
A couple of years ago, yeah. I went to the RNC meetings down there.
Okay.
And there was a meeting the Friday, Saturday night dinner. First speaker was Ron DeSantis. Yeah. Second speaker was Donald Trump. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, I kind of think the locking horns between the two of them is sort of made up.
I don't, well, maybe not. But it's not made up by him, by DeSantis. It's made up by Trump. But what I think though is what hurts Trump, what helps him is kissing babies, remembering people's names. What hurts him is also like Meatball Ron DeSanctimonious.
Yeah.
We both liked Ronald Reagan. What was his number one commandment?
Yeah.
Don't attack it.
The 11th commandment: do not speak ill of a fellow Republican.
And the thing about the thing I was telling a friend of mine the other day. The other thing not the other thing, but the main thing that Trump is furious with DeSantis for is loyalty. He said that I endorsed him. DeSantis was running anyways. And if I was Ron DeSantis, I'd say, are you going to take credit for me being on the Little League World Series championship team? And I would say, there were a lot of things I loved about President Trump. A lot of things. We all do. One of the things I really loved about him was his endorsement of me, and it turned out to be right.
Yeah.
But my number one endorsement by far, and without being disrespectful to him, and it would be just a good, messaging, isn't from you, sir. It's from my wife, Casey.
Yeah.
That's my number one endorsement.
I think DeSantis has played it very...
But he can't get into the mud. He can't get into the mud.
No, he's played it very clean. And people, if you see what the press is doing right now, attacking DeSantis, he's not taking the bait.
Right.
He hasn't taken the bait from Trump. I agree with you. The best thing he can do is throw accolades at Trump, thanking him and feeding on his ego, and then pivoting the way he does very well, pivoting to what the issue is
to what
at hand,
he does, and the differences between the two of them. So
yeah, and what's interesting about even Trump's base, the sanctimonious, attacks, the different attacks on Republicans, that's turning people off.
It turned me off, and I voted for him, a couple of different times.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
I mean, there's a general consensus amongst conservatives, Republicans, libertarians. I mean, anybody who's in the center right, that Ron DeSantis, helped save the republic with the way he attacked COVID with his common sense, data-driven approach.
And everybody thinks it's going to be Trump Biden. It very well could be DeSantis Newsom.
I mean, the way these campaigns go, and we're old enough now that we've seen a number of them, that's not a far off equation, I don't think. I think it could very well be. But
the guy that I think is kind of the guy
because we're very far out, and if you look at the polling that I was just referencing, for DeSantis not to have even announced yet, and we believe he's announcing in June, to be at 20 to 30%, that's not bad. He hasn't spent a dime.
And Obama was there too against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, absolutely, he was.
But the person that I get sick of, the person that does this, is Chris Christie. Now, I remember the reason
Chris Christie doesn't have a chance in God's green earth of winning that nomination.
But the reason,
yet he still goes out.
For those of us that follow politics and stuff, one of the reasons why Donald Trump is president is because Chris Chris Christie attacked Marco Rubio when Marco Rubio had all the wind behind his back. And then he does all this heavy lifting for Trump. And if I was, again, if I was...
And then Trump torpedoed him.
What I would say, the one thing that I personally, and I know you do, a lot of us do, we value loyalty. We value the people that have stuck it out with this, people that I was loyal to my old boss, but my old boss was very loyal to me. That matters. At University of Wyoming, where I went, they have this code of the West up in the hallways there, and it's called standing tall. And honor your word in your handshake. We talked about that the last time I came on here. If you look, again, President Trump did a lot. Who's going to be his vice president? I mean, who would be his vice president? And if I was Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump wasn't going to debate me, or if it's Tim Scott or whoever, I'd say, fine, tell us who your vice president's going to be, because it's not going to be me. And who's it going to be? And so every single person that worked with them, he eventually gets a beef with them, and so that's my only problem is who's going to build up the roster of, because one guy can't do everything. You ran a company, I ran a company. I can't possibly know everything that's going on. It's just my own company, let alone the country. So you better have a really strong team of people that are with you. And so that's my real concern is, who is the team going to be this time around?
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's one thing.
Do you know who it's going to be?
I have no clue. Yeah. I mean, I think instinctively the vice president candidate for Trump will be female, be a woman. Governor of Iowa's been mentioned. Kristi Noem's been mentioned. Nikki Haley's been mentioned. Nikki Haley, of course, is running for president. She's polling below Vivek Ramaswamy. So I don't know if that train's going to leave the station. So, and what she would add to that ticket. But to your point, what's really interesting about DeSantis, he has run a very disciplined administration to where there's no leaks, no one's out there flapping their lips about anything that's going on, and that's a stark contrast with Trump. With Trump, it seems like anybody who's in his orbit at any one time, they feel wronged or slighted or demeaned, they instantly go to the press and talk about whatever they want to talk about.
The other day I saw
and we had to live through that as a country. I don't know if we want to do that again.
Somebody sent out on Twitter, like 10 sitting House members of Florida delegation have endorsed President Trump, which is smart, I guess, and from a political standpoint, because they might live in some really red meat districts.
Yeah.
But there's still...
I don't think that affects DeSantis.
But the majority of the House members have not endorsed anybody.
No.
So they might be waiting for him. So this is going to be, just from pure political theater, it's going to be fun to watch.
Well, and I was listening to Buck Sexton yesterday, and he had a guest on, Nick Runyon, and he was they were talking about the Republican ground game and how so much in 2022 was missed because we just did not operate under the rules that were in front of us, especially when it came to absentee ballots. That there was a stat that they threw out that in Arizona, we have Republicans outnumber Democrats by about 160,000 registered voters, and yet about 1 million absentee ballots went out, and only about 600,000 were returned. We totally failed completely. Right. If we had gotten 80%, that's 60%. If we had gotten at least 80%, we would have swept.
Yeah.
And that has to do with just blocking and tackling, basic ground game. Mm-hmm. And that is the biggest obstacle, whoever the nominee is, because the Democrats have a bit bigger and better machine at this point.
Nationally. But in Florida, he had a great machine. So if he could duplicate
and that's the example. That's the example that they were using.
Right.
That look to Florida for the example that needs to be implemented across the country. And that's part of what Ron DeSantis put in place. They went from a negative Republican registration deficit to I think a 400,000 person shift. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. Fantastic. In terms of what needs to be done going forward.
Right. I mean, that's a question to me.
Yeah. What do you think?
As far as politics,
well,
or the
just
whole
the party. I mean, like
the party.
You've been involved with RNC. You've been involved with a lot of party politics. I'm more involved with grassroots conservative groups.
But I'm not really. I'm not an insider. I mean, I'm a donor. I mean, I'm a business owner.
If you're hanging out with Ronna McDaniel,
I've met her a couple of times, but I've never been to her house, or I don't go. But I've been invited to be on calls. I think what needs to be done is, if you're a small business owner, gun advocate, you're this, that, the other, and then another person's a business person, you got to stop attacking each other, because at the end of the day, they love it. That's why the Democrats were smart. They would get involved in primaries. They want Trump to be the nominee.
Oh, yeah, of course.
They're dying for him to be the nominee. And so if you don't recognize that, like, let's learn to read the
because
room.
they know in key demographics, especially suburban white women, they win and win overwhelmingly.
I live in Juan Siscomani's, my permanent house in Juan Siscomani's district. So if Juan will find a couple of things to cross over and vote with them on, then he's going to be attacked. But if he goes too far one way, he won't get reelected. Then we have a Democratic speaker. So you have to know when to just not be called a rhino, but just know when to fight the battle to win the war, or not fight the battle, when to engage. I mean, but that comes from whoever the leader is. That comes from a unifier, somebody who can get 5 more percent, who could get 20, and then once they do get in power, don't screw it up. Lift everybody up.
Yeah, you have to recognize that certain candidates win in certain districts because of the makeup of those districts.
So in our country right now,
and if you consistently want to run the same type of candidate in districts where they can't win, you're just going to keep losing.
People would quickly, all this stuff that divides us and on social media and we're fighting about and blah, 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 blah. If missiles were flying at us and another country was trying to invade us, I don't think people care who the leader is at that point. They want somebody who can preserve our way of life. So we have to remember, we do need to go back. Our late great friend Dave Sitton would want.
God bless Dave.
God bless. Dave
he's rolling over several times.
He is, and so are a lot of people. But get back to civics, teaching civics, embrace our history. Some things in our history didn't go perfectly right, but we're the greatest country that was ever put on this earth. We've liberated countries. We've allowed immigrants to raise up. We need common sense leadership, not stuff that scratches your head. You talked about the Bud Light thing. I don't even really want to touch on it, because in my business, I want to be friends with everybody, right? And it doesn't matter who buys insurance from us. But talk about a marketing, like not knowing your audience. Like, why even common sense would say, just sell beer, have funny commercials like they always were known for when you were running your distributorship. But don't put any of your business partners in a position where, like, if an employee of ours wants to go out and march for something that I'm against, I'm all for it, because that's their passion. My job as a leader is to show them that, hey, we care too. You don't have to join a union to get great benefits. You don't have to rely on the government to be protected and have a nice livelihood. You can work with people, but this knowing your audience and invoking yourself into stuff that's not common sense. We need a common sense leader. I don't mind people on the other side of the aisle from me who have common sense, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
they think they're fighting for the little guy, and they might be fighting for the little guy, but understand the big guy. And by the way, on our side, well, I think who's big business for anymore? Like big business.
Well, I mean, big business and government.
Yeah.
No, they're tied in with government.
Yeah.
They're operating in concert.
Yeah.
Now, it's what
is Wall Street for Main Street.
I mean, it's what Tucker Carlson would call the rise of the uniparty, and then that's kind of what we're looking at right now in
I would call myself. I mean, maybe there's a no street party that lives in the autonomous zone that doesn't believe in rules. Then there could be, the Wall Street people that take care of themselves, and then there's the Main Street. I think most of us are Main Street.
Most of us are Main Street.
Yeah.
You were talking about the Bud Light thing. We don't need to get into that specifically, but it'd be kind of akin to like one of your vice presidents calling the Cowboys of Wyoming. No,
Rams,
just irrelevant.
Rams,
or just irrelevant. Like we really don't need those Cowboys in Wyoming to sell.
Well,
insurance.
that happened. You know, it happened up there.
And because they're just hicks and they don't understand.
Well, you know
the
what
real
happened?
world.
Funny that you bring that up. About 5 years ago, this is really the University of Wyoming had this marketing campaign called "The World Needs More Cowboys," and they put it on every piece of literature outside the football stadium, everything. There were a group of professors who didn't grow up there, who didn't understand the code of the West. They came in and said, we got to do away with it because Cowboys means racism. It means this. It means this. It means, but it's what they wanted it to mean. But the people, the people of the state, the regents, the students themselves, all went in and said, no, we're going to. The world does need more Cowboys. I'm not a cowboy, but I'm a Wyoming cowboy. A cowboy means helping your neighbor. It means doing the right thing. It means not screwing somebody over in business. It means on plowing your neighbor's field. It means fixing their fence. There's so few people up there. It means not talking disparaging about people and lifting them up. And that's what. But if somebody did come in and say, Cowboys are racist, no, not at all.
But in the halls of Harvard, in the
I would be
halls of
upset,
Yale, in the halls of
that vice president wouldn't work with us anymore.
In the East Coast academia, where I would argue that Anheuser-Busch has been getting most of their vice presidents from for some time now, ever since 2008 when the Brazilians bought the company. You have people within the organization, and it's something that you would know even from insurance. You cannot elevate people who don't understand what they're selling. Who don't understand the brand, who don't understand the sweat equity that the wholesalers have put into those brands to make them what they are. And that means selling to Cowboys and selling to everybody. But the sweat equity that it takes to sell to everybody.
And selling
and that you don't learn behind a desk in New York City.
And oh, by the way,
and that's the problem with AB right now.
Oh, by the way, I'm sure that Anheuser-Busch would sell to a lot of gay bars, and they were great customers.
Absolutely.
But now they've been put into a position where you got to make one. It's either or. So whoever that marketing person was in put everybody in a bad position.
Yep.
Everybody in a bad position.
And she did so out of hubris and arrogance and ignorance.
Right.
Because she didn't understand the brand. She never worked in the brand to the extent of understanding going to Wyoming and selling that brand to Cowboys and getting a cowboy who's drank Coors Light or Coors their entire life to switch to Bud Light or Budweiser. She'd never done that before.
Right.
And until you do that, until you understand that, you don't understand how quickly it takes to lose it.
Yeah, I remember the old Coors Light commercial.
And that's basically what they're finding out now,
because
as of last week, Bud Light has lost 26% of their volume.
Right.
An additional 26 after the 17 and the 21%.
And they could have had banners up at Pride Festival, and I'm sure they did. And it didn't really matter because the cowboy would still respect that person, the gay and lesbian community.
Or the white, Hispanic, blue-collar worker just...
Well, my understanding is...
But when it's in your face,
yeah,
and especially on this specific issue with Dylan Mulvaney, when it's in your face and people are against what that represents,
right,
it will turn on a dime.
Well,
especially with the culture war that's happening.
How about if somebody's...
And it just goes to show with what you said earlier, like what Michael Jordan says, Republicans buy Nikes, Democrats buy Nikes. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself in the culture.
And you don't really want to put you don't want to. What's the best is if you know somebody is a liberal or they know you're a conservative or vice versa, and you still respect them for how they live their life and how they interact in the community and what they do for the community, and if they know that how you live your life and they can respect you for it rather than every single day be in their face telling you how you feel about how they should be.
Exactly.
Make them decide. And I just think that it was just a poor decision, and we just got to get back to common sense things.
Yeah. Well, my heroes have always been cowboys.
I have to thank you about something, though.
Yeah. We got about another minute or two.
Okay. A year and a half ago, you sent me an email of a person that you said, hey, if you know anybody, because you're in the insurance business, would you pass this person's resume on to somebody, anybody that you know? And I opened up the email and I actually read it. I admit I sometimes don't always. And it was an email of a retiring Navy SEAL who was crossing over into the private sector.
Yeah.
Got the guy's resume. We ended up hiring him. He is our risk and safety manager, a guy named Chester Henderson.
Yeah.
Our people at the office were like, well, he doesn't really have risk management control. I'm like, hello. And I just recently, 2 weeks ago, we went to the SEAL Foundation dinner up here in Scottsdale. And there were 14 retired SEALs there. And most amazing group of human beings I've ever been around. Leaders, they've done so much for our country. And that foundation is something that if anybody's looking for really qualified, good people, I encourage you to reach out to the SEALs Foundation or call me or call Chris, because, leadership, humble, loyal, MBA, we asked him to do a couple of things. He got it done, and the person before him in 3 years never got it done.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, that recommendation came from a friend of mine, Wayne Bell, who is very, very involved with the SEAL Foundation, very, very involved with the SEAL community in general, and has a tremendous heart for that. And he passes stuff out along like that to me a lot. And
can I do a commercial for Crest real quick?
Absolutely. So at that, you're a supporter of the network.
Yeah,
Please do that.
At that during that event, we bought a fundraiser, and I just was bidding to get it up, and I actually won it. But it's to go out with 8 SEALs that live in the valley who retired, go for picnics on drink beer in Jeeps, and you get shoot 10,000 rounds, and they'll teach you how to rescue hostages and all sorts of stuff. And, yeah. So that might be a funny event. So if you're not currently a customer and you want to maybe call us, you can come on that. You can come to that event with us with some of our other customers. And one of the guys I haven't even called yet is another referral of yours, Brandon Bunger. I think he would probably enjoy.
Oh, that. Brandon would love it. Yeah. I know he's done it before. Yeah. So, and where can people find you if they want to reach out?
Just crestins.com, Cody Ritchie. Look us up, and be glad to talk to you, and really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show again.
Oh, no. Thank you, Cody. You're a great friend, one of my closest friends, and really appreciate all you've done for me personally and my family over the years. And like I said, how I opened the show, I think what you're doing at Crest for the state of Arizona is tremendous, and you guys deserve a lot of credit. And it's reflective of you as a person, as a family man, as a friend to so many people. So thank you.
Well, thank you. But the real thanks go out to our team. We have great people who sacrifice a lot, and the companies that do business with us, insurance companies, but the customers. Without customers, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So,
well, disclaimer, I am a customer.
Yeah, so thank you.
So remember, this podcast is a great podcast of faith, freedom, free enterprise. Thank you for listening, and God bless.
Thank you.